Maple Creek, Ohio, was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than the local high school track star. On a chilly October morning, the courthouse clock tower rang out across Main Street. Inside the Maple Brew Cafe, locals sipped coffee and whispered about the biggest trial the town had seen in years. A young woman had been found dead behind the old steel mill, and the police arrested Evan Porter, a quiet 27-year-old mechanic known for showing up early and working late. Almost no one in town believed he did it. But the case had become political, and the state wanted a conviction. At a corner booth, Evan's mother, Mary Ann, stirred her coffee with trembling hands. "He didn't do this, Ruth," she whispered to her friend. "My son would never hurt anyone." Ruth reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Everyone knows that, honey, but it's the state you're going up against, not just the truth." Across the room, the conversation paused as a young man walked in, awkward, lanky, carrying a stack of binders nearly taller than he was. "That him?" someone murmured. "Yeah, the prosecutor. New guy from Columbus. What's his name again?" Neil something. "Neil Carter," another voice added. "And from what I hear, he's clueless." He dropped a binder. Papers flew everywhere. People exchanged glances. "Oh, Lord," someone sighed. Judge Helen Brackett's courtroom held the rustic charm of old America, polished oak benches, dusty flags, and portraits of former judges who stared down from the walls like disappointed grandparents. A mix of farmers, factory workers, retirees, and teenagers from the local high school civics class filled the gallery. The case had become community theater, half justice, half spectacle. Evan Porter entered in handcuffs. His jaw was tight, but his eyes held exhaustion rather than guilt. His father, Tom Porter, nodded at him from the first row, an old-school American blue-collar dad. Shoulders worn from years at the auto plant. He didn't cry, but the grief sat deep in his eyes. Next came the defense attorney, Rebecca Hale, a fast-talking, sharp-minded woman from Cincinnati known for her strategic brilliance. She carried herself like she'd been in a fight her whole life, and usually won. Then the prosecutor walked in. Neil Carter, 28, nervous, sweating already. His tie was crooked, his stack of folders nearly collapsing again. Judge Brackett sighed quietly. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." Good morning, Your Honor," he stammered. I'm ready for trial." Rebecca looked at him like she could already see the cracks forming in the state's case. Prosecutor Neil Carter. Neil rose, throat bobbing. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that..." He stopped, stared at his papers, pulled out the wrong sheet. That the defendant committed tax evasion?" A ripple of laughter spread through the gallery. Judge Brackett raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Carter, this is a murder trial." Neil's face turned red. Yes, of course. Sorry, wrong sheet." Rebecca Hale leaned toward Evan and whispered, "This may be the easiest case of my career." Neil shuffled papers. Started again. "The state will prove that the defendant murdered the victim, Sarah Collins, behind the steel mill. He was the last person to see her alive. He had motive, and we have very strong forensic evidence." He said that last part with the confidence of someone who didn't understand the evidence at all, but hoped no one noticed. Rebecca noticed. So did the jury. Defense attorney Rebecca Hale. She stepped forward calmly, like a professor addressing classroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, the state wants you to believe that Evan Porter, a hard-working young man with no criminal history, suddenly murdered a woman he barely knew, without motive, without witnesses, and without any reliable evidence." Her voice dropped lower, more intimate. "This case is not about justice. It's about pressure. Political pressure. Public pressure. Pressure to close a case quickly." She paused. "And when you mix pressure with inexperience, you get mistakes." She glanced at Neil. He swallowed visibly. "And mistakes," she finished, "are fatal to the truth." The state called its first witness, Detective Mark Ellison, a seasoned cop with square jaw and a history of cutting corners. He sat confidently, hands folded, expression neutral. Neil approached him nervously. "Detective, can you tell us how you came to suspect the defendant?" Ellison nodded. We found the victim's phone in a dumpster behind Evan Porter's workplace. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Neil smiled awkwardly, his first moment of confidence. See? Strong evidence, he muttered under his breath. Rebecca rose slowly. Your Honor, may I cross-examine? Judge Brackett, proceed. Rebecca walked toward Ellison like a lion approaching a wounded deer. Detective, what time did you find the phone? 5:42 p.m. And what time was Evan Porter at work that day? His employer said he clocked out at 5 p.m., so the phone was found nearly 45 minutes after he left. A few jurors leaned forward. Ellison tensed. Yes, but... And did you test the phone for fingerprints? No. For DNA? No. For location data? No. Rebecca tilted her head, expression sharp. So you're telling this court that you found a phone in a public dumpster, accessible to hundreds of people, and assumed it belonged to the defendant because... Why exactly? Ellison stiffened. It was suspicious. Suspicious? She repeated. Is that the standard for arrest now in Maple Creek? Judge Brackett hid a smirk behind her hand. The jury exchanged looks. Neil's confidence evaporated. Next came the state's forensic analyst, Bethany Downs, a middle-aged woman with thick glasses and a stack of lab reports. Neil cleared his throat. Ms. Downs, can you explain the DNA evidence found on the victim? Yes, she said, adjusting her glasses. We found skin cells on the victim's jacket, but the sample was too degraded to confirm a match. Neil blinked. But you told me we had a match. She shook her head. No, I told you the opposite. The DNA was inconclusive. A couple of jurors covered their mouths. Trying not to laugh. Rebecca stood. Ms. Downs, did the sample show any strong link to Evan Porter? No. Could the DNA belong to dozens or even hundreds of possible individuals? Yes. Rebecca paced thoughtfully. And did you at any point tell the prosecutor the sample was inconclusive? Yes, multiple times. She pointed casually toward Neil. And did he understand that? Downs looked at Neil, then back at Rebecca. I don't think so. The gallery erupted in muffled laughter. Judge Brackett banged her gavel. Order. But even she was smiling. During the lunch break, Neil sat in the courthouse break room, head in hands. He had dreamed of becoming a powerful prosecutor, a hero for justice. But now, he felt like a clumsy kid playing dress-up in his father's suit. His mentor from Columbus texted him, "Don't screw this up. The press is watching." His stomach twisted. He stared at his reflection in the vending machine's glass. "What am I doing?" he whispered. Across the hall, Rebecca Hale sipped coffee, watching him through the open doorway. There was no malice in her eyes, only a calm, seasoned understanding. She'd been in his shoes once. Young, nervous, out of her depth, but experience had carved her into steel. Neil? He was still soft clay. When court resumed, Neil called his star witness, Tyler Briggs, a young man in his early 20s. Nervous, shifty-eyed, wearing a hoodie despite the courtroom's warmth. He avoided Evan's gaze. Neil puffed up his chest. Mr. Briggs, please tell the court what you saw on the night of the murder. Tyler's voice quivered. I saw Evan Porter walking with Sarah Collins near the steel mill, and they were yelling. Neil exhaled in relief. Finally, something helpful. Rebecca rose with slow, deliberate confidence. Mr. Briggs, how long have you known Evan Porter? Not long. Are you sure? Yeah. Rebecca flipped through her notes. Strange, because according to your social media posts, the two of you attended Maple Creek High together for 4 years. Tyler froze. And isn't it true, Rebecca continued, that Evan reported you to the school administration for stealing tools from the auto shop? Tyler swallowed. I don't remember. Oh, I'm sure you do. Her tone sharpened. In fact, you were suspended for 3 days, weren't you? Tyler's voice cracked. This has nothing to do with... Oh, it has everything to do with credibility. She leaned in. Mr. Briggs, did Detective Ellison promise to help you out with your pending drug possession charge if you testified against my client? The courtroom went silent. Tyler's foot tapped rapidly on the floor. I don't know what you're talking about. Rebecca turned to Judge Brackett. Your Honor, the defense would like to submit Exhibit B, a recording of Detective Ellison's conversation with Mr. Briggs, obtained legally from a nearby security camera. A collective gasp rippled across the room. Neil's eyes went wide. Ellison's jaw dropped. Rebecca pressed play. Ellison's voice filled the courtroom speakers. Just say you saw them together. We'll make sure your charges disappear. Tyler buried his face in his hands. Rebecca looked at the jury. No more questions. The murder case was collapsing in real time. Judge Brackett's calm broke. Detective Ellison stepped forward. He obeyed, jaw tight. The judge's voice was cold as steel. You coerced a witness. You withheld exculpatory evidence. And worse, you lied under oath. Ellison tried to speak. She raised a hand. Be silent. She turned to Neil. And you? Did you know about this deal? Neil's eyes filled with horror. No, Your Honor. I swear I had no idea. She studied him closely and believed him. Then she addressed the jury. This court will take a recess. A very long one. Her gavel struck. The hallway buzzed like a disturbed beehive. Reporters rushed in. Townspeople whispered. Lawyers argued. Evan's mother held on to him tightly, tears streaming down her face. You're coming home, she whispered. You're coming home, baby. Meanwhile, Neil sat on a bench outside the courtroom, staring at the floor. Rebecca approached quietly. He didn't look up. I messed everything up, he said softly. I should quit. Rebecca sat beside him. No, she said gently. You learned something today that law school can't teach. Neil finally met her eyes. What's that? That justice is bigger than winning. And if you remember that, you'll be a good prosecutor someday. Neil swallowed hard. Thank you. She nodded, then walked back toward Evan's family, toward justice. The judge returned after long deliberation. Her voice was calm, but firm. Given the state's collapse of evidence, the misconduct uncovered and the lack of credible testimony, this court dismisses all charges against Evan Porter. He is free to go. Cheers filled the courtroom. Evan broke down, crying into his father's arms. Judge Brackett added, and this court will be opening a formal investigation into Detective Ellison and the state prosecutor's office. Neil paled, but he nodded. He knew it was the right thing. A week later, Maple Creek began healing. Evan returned to work at the auto shop, greeted by warm handshakes and homemade meals from neighbors. The steel mill installed new security cameras and lighting. Judge Brackett called for statewide reforms in evidence handling. And Neil? He stayed. He worked harder. He studied more. He learned from his mistakes. Because in America, justice isn't perfect, but there's always room for redemption.